13 million wafers. 26 Chinese silicon carbide supplier, because apparently everyone and their cousin is starting a silicon carbide company. Hey Ron, Stanley here. Every year we get a fresh wave of silicon carbide market reports. Big forecasts, big capacity numbers, big headlines about explosive growth or declining demand. But when you look a little bit closer, well, not everything adds up. And if you're trying to make real-world decisions, that kind of noise can be really dangerous. So in this video, I'm not here to give you one magic number. I'm here to give you a framework where we're going to look at the market reports, what they actually said, compared to with the real data coming out of China, and then zoom all the way out into the fundamentals. Furnaces, spool size, yields, that stuff that actually determines how many wafers you can produce. And then we'll pull it all together with a real company example from Semicon Europa in Munich 2025 that you probably met. And by the end of the video, you will know what's realistic, what's hype, and how to think about capacity planning like someone who's really inside the industry. Alright, so let's jump in. Alright, let's start with market reports. What are they really telling us? Now, because every year these things comes out with fancy charts, colorful arrows, and numbers that looks super convincing until you actually read them. Take Yole for example. In their 2023 reports, they say global demand for 6-inch equivalent silicon carbide wafers in 2024 would be just over 1 million units. Alright, sounds reasonable, but then in the same reports, global production capacity was already over 3 million wafers. So basically, we already had twice as much capacity as demand. So, great start. Now, fast forward to China in 2025, a Chinese report says production capacity in China jumped from 900,000 wafers in 2022 to 4 million by the end of 2024. And if you add all the planned capacity expansion, that could hit 13 million wafers. 13 million against Yole's demand forecast back then of 1 million. So, who's right? Well, honestly, both or neither. Western reports like Yole tends to look at realistic demand, while Chinese reports looked at planned capacity, which is basically everyone saying, yeah, we can do it, but long before they actually can. But here's why it matters. If you're a company trying to invest, these numbers can completely change your strategy. But because you might be thinking, great, demand is huge, let's scale up. Meanwhile, reality might be saying, you and 50 other companies are thinking the same thing. So before you make $100 million decision based on colorful reports, hold on. So in the next section, let's jump a little bit deeper into Chinese company data. What's actually happening in Chinese silicon carbide production? Okay, so earlier we talked about market reports. But now let's look at what's actually happening on the factory floor in China. And trust me, the numbers here, they are not tiny, they are not medium, they are China-sized. So if we look at this article here, out of 26 Chinese silicon carbide suppliers we analyzed, yep, 26, because apparently everyone and their cousin is starting a silicon carbide company. And here's what the production roadmaps look like. Beijing Tianke Heda Tank Blue planning 800,000 wafers in 2025. That's not a plan, that's ambition with caffeine. Shandong Tianyue SiC going from 600,000 wafers and already testing 12-inch wafers because 6 inches for beginners. Sanan Optoelectronics currently at 192,000 6-inch wafers, but they also have this joint venture in Chongqing targeting 100,000 8-inch wafers. So yes, you can argue that they are basically collecting wafer sizes like Pokemon cards. And then you've got the rest, right? Jingyue, Shuoke, Semi6, Tongwang, Senline, all planning anything from tens of thousands to 100,000 and even up to 1 million wafers. Some of them even say, why not produce 12-inch too? Now, if we add up the production target from these 26 companies, we get around 5 to 6 million wafers per year. And that's just a subset of China, not even global, not even close. Here's what gets interesting. Depending on which report you read, your mental model of the market could be completely wrong. Chinese language sources estimate 13 million wafers planted globally in 2024. Western analysts, more like 3 millions, which is a very, let's be conservative and hope nobody noticed estimate. And then here's one important thing, because right now you might be thinking, whoa, China is going to flood the market. But whoa, slow down a little bit. Capacity does not equals to usable wafers. Let's take Bosch Infineon for example. Only accepts super strict P-grade wafers. And let's put it politely, yields vary a lot. So many companies say they will make millions of wafers, but the number of wafers that pass the so-called automotive level specs, yeah, that could be dramatically lower. And that leads us perfectly to the next question. How many furnaces do you actually need in order to produce 1 million wafers per year? Considering yield, downtime, and real manufacturing constraints. Because this is where things gets fun. And what I mean by fun, I mean real math. I'm Asian, but I don't like math. Don't worry, I'll make it simple. But if you're planning investment, purchasing equipment, or trying to forecast for the next 5 years of silicon carbide demand, this next part is critical. So the topic is furnaces, wafers, and why 1 million wafers is not what you think. Okay, so now we've talked about who is building what, and let's zoom into something more concrete. What does it actually take to produce 1 million silicon carbide wafers in a year? Sounds nice on paper, right? But in real life, this is where people either A, quietly close their Excel sheet, or B, realize they need a lot more furnaces. Let's start with the core of everything, the furnace. One furnace can pump around 3 boules per month. Not bad, right? But a boule isn't some giant magical wafer pizza. Once you slice it, dice it, polish it, grind it, a 15mm boule gives you about 20 wafers, depending on your using laser cutting or wire cutting. Upgrade the boule to 20mm and you get around 28 wafers. Yep, 8 wafers difference. Doesn't sound like much until you are making millions. Now, here's where people start sweating. Not every wafer survives the manufacturing Hunger Games. This is yield, and depending on your yield, your furnace requirements go from manageable to I need land from the government. So let's take an example. For a 15-meter boule to hit 1 million wafers per year, 15% yield, you need 9,000 plus furnaces. Good luck explaining that to your CFO. 30% yield, you need 4,600 furnaces. 50% yield, you need 2,800 furnaces. And 80% yield, around 1,700 furnaces. Still huge, but at least you can count them without crying, right? But wait a second, we're not even done yet. We just talked about wafer yield, but before we can talk about wafer yield, we also have to consider boule yield and equipment uptimes. These are some parameters you also need to factor in. So basically, every step has a chance to ruin your day. And to make things even spicier, Bosch recently dropped some actual data in a webinar. They examined 21 boules from 7 suppliers, 3 samples each, and graded each wafer as either sufficient or insufficient. And the surprising part is 8-inch wafers perform just as well as 6-inch wafers. So large wafers aren't just a dream anymore. They are catching up really fast. And I believe Bosch isn't just stopping there. They are probably already watching 12-inch wafers like a hawk. So when someone says, oh yeah, we need 1 million wafers, just know they are actually talking about furnace strategy, boule size, yield improvement, equipment uptime, and automotive grade quality standard, all rolled into one sentence. In other words, 1 million wafers is not just a number, it's an entire strategy. Let's move on to a real-world example of furnace math versus ambition. Alright, we've talked theory, furnaces, boules, yields, wafer counts. It's all fun and games until someone says, hey, here's our actual production plan. So let's take a real example you might stumble upon at Semicon Europa in Munich 2025. Synlight Semiconductor, Tongguang, a Chinese manufacturer that has been around since 2012. Now, Synlight's marketing flyer, let's say it's confident, optimistic, and pragmatic. They say that optical wafers used for AR and AR glasses have industry-leading refractive index, great visibility, absorptions, all that good stuff. But here's the part that actually caught my attention. They are gearing up for mass production for 12-inch optical wafers with 200,000 wafers per year, 8-inch equivalent, and targeting 1 million wafers per year by 2027 and 2028. Okay, now we're talking. But let's pause there, because you've been probably following this video and didn't fall asleep during the furnace math, right? So you already know what that statement implies. 1 million wafers per year means each furnace gives you 3 boules per month. A boule gives you 20 to 28 wafers depending on the thickness. And the yield decides whether you are celebrating or quietly pretending your wafers don't exist. So if you start plugging Synlight's target into the same math we used earlier, yeah, you can immediately imagine the scale of operation, the land that they need, the capex, the opex, the engineering pipeline, and you can definitely start asking the fun question: is that actually realistic? And trust me, the people sitting right in the epicenter of this silicon carbide earthquake, they probably already have a strong few opinions on that. But here's the point, and don't get me wrong, it's not about judging Synlight, it's about using them as a real-world case study. This is how you go from looking at nice round numbers in a PowerPoint slide to actually understanding the mechanics behind it. Furnace throughput, boule growth limitations, wafer yield, quality requirements, and how all this compound into a production strategy. Synlight is just one example, but the framework applies everywhere. You can use this exact thinking to analyze any companies, any claims capacity numbers, and any 1 million wafer per year announcement you see in the news. Because once you understand the furnace math, you will never look at these numbers the same way again. Alright, so let's move on to the last part of this video, inspiration and strategy thinking. Wrapping up. Alright, so let's bring this home. We've looked at the market reports. We've seen what the Chinese companies are planning to build. We walked through Synlight as an example and even suffered through the math together. Boules, yields, and wafer counts, all the fun stuff you didn't expect when you clicked this video. But here's the thing you need to remember. Yield is the real wildcard. Whether it's 15%, 30%, 50, 80, that one number can turn your furnace requirements from manageable to we need an entire new industrial park. It completely changes the scale of the game, and that's the point. This video is not about giving you the magical answer like you need 4,323 furnaces and 12% optimism and 2% luck. No, it's about perspective. It's about showing you the lever that actually matters. Because if you are a company planning real investments, whether you are SiC, Tanker Blue, or Synlight shooting for 1 million wafers per year, you're wrestling with the same strategic questions. How many furnaces do I really need? What yield can I realistically expect? How fast can I scale without losing quality, and where does this put me in the market after 5 years from now? These are not academic questions. These are boardroom questions, budget questions, questions that makes or breaks billion-dollar decisions. So here's the takeaway, and this is the important part. It's not about certainty, it's about framework, it's about imagination supported by real engineering constraints. Market reports give you numbers only, but real insights come from connecting those numbers to physics, manufacturing realities, and strategic choices. The numbers are just starting point. What you decide to believe, questions, challenge, and invest in, that's where the future gets written. And if there's one thing I hope you take with you after this video, it is this. In a world full of predictions, the advantage belongs to the ones who think critically, act boldly, and build with intention. Market changes, technology evolves, but perspective, that's something you can carry with you. The numbers may point in one or every direction, but the future is built by the people who know how to read between them.